A leading rights group has called on the U.S. and the U.K. to stop Saudi Arabia from executing 14 people who face death based on evidence gathered under torture. London-based charity Reprieve said nearly all of the convictions were meted out for protest-related charges. Reprieve described the imminent executions as, quote, an extremely worrying move from the increasingly brutal regime in Saudi Arabia. The group added that the convicts included at least one juvenile and a disabled man. It said executing such people would be an appalling breach of international law. The charity stressed that Saudi Arabia was using the fight on terrorists as a pretext to sentence juveniles and protesters to death. It said Riyadh seemed to have stepped up the executions under the new Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman after 14 people were put to death just earlier this week. Let's bring in Jason Unruhe, political commentator and analyst from Ontario. Mr. Unruhe, this time around, a leading rights group expresses concern over imminent executions in Saudi Arabia. But this sure isn't the first time such alarming violations of human rights are witnessed in Saudi Arabia. Not many people were surprised, were you?
Oh, absolutely not. Saudi Arabia has one of the most dismal human rights record, frankly, in history. Some of it bordering on some of the greatest inhumanities that were carried out during the Middle Ages, barbary to that kind of degree. Executions are not uncommon in Saudi Arabia, even for very minor offenses. Sometimes something as simple as a woman driving a car is enough to get her a death sentence. Even if there's two people who care about each other and have relations outside of marriage, it is enough to have them both killed. I mean, even women are killed for having been the victims of sexual crimes. It's not shocking at all. This is very much the stock and trade of the Saudi government.
And the Reprieve Rights Group has called on the U.S. and the U.K. to stop Saudi Arabia from executing those 14 people. Do you see that going anywhere?
Frankly, I don't see that going anywhere at all. Saudi Arabia has been able to be one of the world's worst human rights violators, with barely a peep out of some of the largest imperialist powers, including the UK and the United States. Despite their professed love for democracy and human rights, they seem to turn a blind eye whenever it's one of their own or one of their own allies who commits this kind of heinous crime against its people. I mean, the United States and the UK, longstanding, have just looked the other way when Saudi Arabia has committed terrible human rights crimes, even when they've done them to American and British citizens. So I really don't think appealing to the conscience of the imperialists will have any effect whatsoever.
Okay, thank you very much for your thoughts. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Unruhe. Jason Unruhe out of Ontario. He's a political commentator and analyst.